the opportunity is to recognize that, I can only make change within me, really, not being able to control anybody else. And the more I own that, the more I can find access to that, I will transform in my ability to have harmonious relationships, make healthy choices, learn how to have boundaries, change the way I am within me, with myself. It just how I see myself. All of that is what becomes available, and it's the ultimate empowerment.
Today's unreasonable human overcame an incredibly traumatic childhood and not only healed herself, but has gone on to share the wisdom she has gained in order to help others heal themselves too. She holds a master's degree in spiritual psychology and is a trauma-informed transformational coach. Her name is Kamakshi Hart.
Hi, Kamakshi.
Hello, Erica.
Thank you so much for joining me on Unreasonable Humans. It is such an honor to have you on the show. I think when we first met a little while ago, and we sparked a conversation and went very deep very quickly, I realized, I definitely have to have you on the show.
I love it.
And I especially when I found out that you do transformational coaching, I just thought, oh my gosh, that one of the greatest tools that a person who wants to live an unreasonably authentic life can use to affect such great change in their lives. So I'm really excited about talking to you about transformation today and to going deeper into it. But I would like to start, because I always start with finding out a little bit more about the unreasonable human that I am speaking to. So Kamakshi, can you first tell me where were you born?
I was born just outside of Chicago in Evanston, which is the place of Northwestern University. My father was a graduate student there.
And then where did you stay there and grow up there the whole time?
Oh, no, till 2 years old. And then we moved to a small town in Pennsylvania. And that was for 4 years. Then we moved to Indianapolis, Indiana. And that was for 7 years. And then to northwestern Minnesota on the North Dakota border. And you can tell I have a reaction to that. That was 13 to 17. And then I had 1 year of high school left. We moved to northeastern Pennsylvania. Wow. And I went on. My father was a history professor. Then he became a college administrator. So it was all these career advancements. But that landed me near New York City, which ultimately was where I moved as an adult.
Okay, wow. So you moved around a lot. I'd love to know from your upbringing, what eventually led you to want to become a transformational coach? What was what led you into this work?
I'm sure many people are familiar with the term intergenerational family trauma. So a lot of traumatic material that I didn't really uncover till much later, but in survival mode, and through my experience, the experience of my mother and father, there were so many family cataclysmic events, I guess you could say. And so obviously I didn't know this at the time. I was then in survival mode, and many things that I now understand why that were very negative, very continually traumatic occurred. And so I, at some point, I mean, really the desire to survive was so strong in me. And I also, alongside that, I have such a distinct memory of being very, very young, like 4 or 5 years old, and knowing I had a direct connection to the divine. And that's what helped me. I don't think I would still be here on the planet if it wasn't for that. And so for whatever the reasons are, that convergence in my particular soul's journey guided me towards, how do I get help? How do I get out of this? And how do I, again, I didn't have those words at the time, but transform suffering within myself.
I mean, that's a big step forward, that you had that awareness to do that, because so many people do get stuck in their early childhood trauma. It's so deep seated, and a lot of the times it's not even remembered, a lot of the trauma, and if it is remembered, it's even more so. And then you've got, like you say, the intergenerational trauma that sticks with you. What was the thing that sort of the catalyst that spurred you to finding the strength to start transformation within yourself?
Oh, there's so many different points. But I would say, especially, I was in New York when I moved to New York City at 21, and then I was in the theater world, and I was around people who were more open and more, had been exposed to healing and new ideas. And then I found, that led me along to finding yoga. But alongside of that, so that was the light side, and then the shadow side was an ongoing pattern of attracting abusive male relationships. And that was mirroring my shadow, but my soul was looking for the light, So I was doing both. I was drawing both types of experiences. And thankfully, the light finally shone brighter, which light does. And the yoga experiences started leading me to want more. So I actually became a yoga teacher at the Kripalu Center for Yoga in Western Massachusetts. And partly to save myself from some real dangers, but also the calling of, I want more of this. I moved in.
You moved into the Kripalu Center. And how long did you live there for?
I lived there for about 3 years.
Wow.
And this was in my early 30s.
Sure. That's a very defining time. Your early 30s, to do something like that, especially at that age, must have been very defining. So did you stay at the center? You didn't really go out of the center? Where is the Kripalu Center? Is it in quite a remote region, or not really?
No, not really. It's in the Berkshires, which are the mountains on the western part of Massachusetts. It's it's quite a destination. There's something called Tanglewood, which is right across the road, which is a very renowned place for music, symphonies, concerts in the summer. It's quite a beautiful area. So no, it's very accessible. And it's a guest center. It still is. It just changed. It's no longer an ashram, but there were programs going on all year round for people from anywhere to come to. So,
oh, that's really nice.
It's a big mix of many, many people.
What is it like living in an ashram?
Well, it's not what most people would think. And there's many different ones, and have been, of course. And whether you're in India or you have a version of it going on in this country or another, it's the one I lived in. Can't speak to anybody else's. The intent of the community was healing and transformation and spiritual awakening. So that was a 24/7 activation. So it was intense. Never nonstop.
Yeah, because I guess everybody's on their own transformation journeys. Yeah. And so everybody is going through their own stuff at very different times. So there's always somebody going through something at some time.
And when you have 350 people living there, and the whole community was in this continual place of transformation.
Yeah, because you're also living you're really living in real community with one another, because we've really forgotten nowadays what what community used to be, and that's where you are interwoven into other people's lives, really interwoven. And so there has to be so much understanding and compassion and patience and and I'm sure along with that comes, like you said, the shadow side, the frustration, the anger, because then you're also dealing with your own stuff. So what I'd love to know about your time at Kripalu, because this was 3 years, you were all going through great transformation. I guess that would lead me to my question. After being there for 3 years, what did you realize transformation is, the definition of transformation? What is transformation?
Well, I would say the simplest definition is change. To transform is to change. So then you can take it in a lot of, many directions, but it is, you could say it's you're upgrading your software.
Yeah.
You're seeking to align with something greater than, so that would be the word like transcendent. It's a higher level of, when there's the terms taking the higher road. I think Michelle Obama was quoted as saying, if they go low, we go high.
Yeah.
So it's the higher road is the road of consciousness. And so a great example when, talking about life there, and it happens all day long, every day, everywhere. It's just more concentrated when you're all living in this place and engaging in a container that is designed to heat it all up for you. Is that the opportunities are immense to recognize that I can create different experiences for myself. I can see things through different eyes. Because our perspectives and our perceptions are 100% our own. And to think that anybody else would share them is not actually, based in reality. Because, right, everybody's having their own perceptual filter. And so the opportunity is to recognize that, I can only make change within me, really, not being able to control anybody else. And the more I own that, the more I can find access to that, I will transform in my ability to have harmonious relationships, make healthy choices, learn how to have boundaries, change the way I am within me, with myself. It just how I see myself, all of that is what becomes available. And it's the ultimate empowerment.
Yeah, it's amazing. What would you say was your greatest gift that you received from being at the ashram? Like your greatest sort of nuggets, golden nugget that you learned while you were there when it comes to your own personal transformation?
I just told a story to a client this morning. So it's always difficult for me to just choose one thing, but I'll settle on two. They're connected. Because it was a container again where people would often literally could potentially fall on the floor and start crying at any given moment. And I was having one of those moments, and because I had a lot to heal. So that was happening, and I don't remember all the details, but I was having a meltdown. And somebody who lived there had been there much longer than me, and there were a lot of beautiful, beautiful people there. And I remember her coming to talk to me. And the one thing that she said, where I can't remember all the other things she said, was she was talking about what I was just saying, how we can transform our ways of seeing and being. And when the transformation inside of ourselves through healing occurs, everything else looks different, including other people and situations. And so she shared this quote with me, and it's, "My, how different you look since I've changed."
Oh, I love that.
And I went, and it, well, I kind of went, what? I was like, wait a minute, let me wrap my head around that. And even still to this day, when I say it, I say it carefully because it's such a pattern interrupt. And it was one of many gems that literally changed me in that moment. And the other is, short version, as short as I can make it, the guru, the teacher of the ashram, I think I shared before with you, he was kicked out while I was there. It was a huge event. All the stuff from the past had come forward, him, seducing his students, lying about it, laundering money, all this crap that goes on. And I was so devoted. I was just full on, headlong into it completely. And so it was an enormous hit for me. It brought up so much other stuff.
I'm sure.
But then as I worked through it, and I moved out, all that, and then as I was working through it over the next couple of years, I realized that I actually lived the true teaching, which is the guru is leading us from darkness to light. That's what guru means. And the intent of the guru is to lead us to our Sadguru, which is the inner teacher. And that I felt I genuinely had that experience.
Oh, it's so great because it really is, and I absolutely believe that that's what we are here to do in this life, is to find that inner knowing, that inner, and I always find it interesting that, in order to find that inner knowing, you do have to connect to something higher than yourself. You do have to connect to something outside of yourself, but it's all connected. It's like this, I love to look at it as like this ray of light that comes from, wherever it comes, and it connects straight back into our being. And, that's what we sense when we go inward. I think that that's a really beautiful thing that you learned, and that true transformation. When you change, everything around you changes. When you find that transformation within yourself, it can't help, it's like this knock-on effect, and you can't help to notice everything around you. I would love to know something, because obviously being in that container of this ashram, so you now leave this ashram, which you probably weren't really planning on doing it so soon, and then all this stuff happened, and then you have to leave. What was it like? Now you've gone through all this transformation work, and this is, I'm sure a lot of people, they go through transformation work of whatever it is, and then they have to integrate back into society. It's like going on a really lovely holiday or whatever, and then you come back and suddenly you're in the rat race of life. How was it for you to integrate all the transformation that had happened in you? Did you find it difficult to integrate back into normal society, into what we call this mad world?
It was definitely an event, and there's so many layers and levels always, and it's always going to be different for each person and depending on the circumstances. And in this case, because things had gone absolutely crazy, there was some relief in leaving. And I did choose to. I didn't have to, but I chose to. And it was also, there was a lot of grief because I thought I was going to live there forever. That was my early 30s, like, I'm going to be here forever. And I value that about myself at that time. But yes, it was kind of a big bump, and I moved to Washington, D.C., which I had not lived there fully before, but grew up with D.C., so it was an area that was familiar. And I was determined to, spread the yoga gospel. So I did set about, teaching yoga, and what it led me to was eventually creating a yoga community, but that doesn't answer the question. The integration, it was a big deal. And because I had to deal with the grief of losing all that I had built my hopes and dreams on. and especially the community, because what it had awakened in me, even though it was tumultuous and confrontive, I was like, wow, a spiritual community where the focus, that people get up in the morning and chant and pray, and the spiritual intent, even with all the messiness, was still something that I felt like I'd always, I'd had some longing for that had never, seen that expression. And then a lot of the people, there were some absolutely incredible people there. And so it was hard to go back into, it was a big bump to go back to our world, which I think is still, it's so odd, really, how after such a length of time of human history where people lived in tribes and villages, and then this shorter time frame of us living in our own little bubbles, and the level of isolation and loneliness, and feeling like you have to figure it all out by yourself, kind of thing. That was hard. There was like, there were people all around, and sometimes it was like, oh, get away. But there was a lot of resources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that's really what, the seed was planted, and maybe it was that longing that eventually propelled you to open your yoga studio, because you not only wanted to spread the word, it was, you really could understand the power of true community, and why wouldn't you want to share that and build that? So can we talk about your yoga studio? I'd love to talk about your time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Dancing Heart Center for Yoga and the Art of Living on Capitol Hill. And I was very close to the Senate offices and all the Library of Congress and all that stuff. And so it was very bold. And the name of the place, people would tease me when I found an actual place, because I was teaching yoga all around in different places. And the sign was longer than the front of the building, is what people, it wasn't really, but I didn't care. But I knew, and also what I had been indoctrinated in living at Kripalu, and then also because we had guests all the time. So I was a part of leading programs and teaching yoga to the guests. So that, of course, would show the shiny side of things. But it was also authentic, and that the way of inviting people into a healing space, and really that was really my training, like that this is a place to connect and be seen and cared about, and that your whole self matters, and we're just doing yoga to have a reason to get together. Really, ultimately, it's like the overemphasis that can happen, especially in our Western world, with focus on, your ability to do the asanas, to execute them, or how you look, and unfortunately that's a Western culture overlay. And also the way in urban areas anyway, I don't know, people can just kind of want to stay in their separate little lane, and they won't connect unless it's created, and is what I found. So, and especially in Washington, D.C., let me tell you, in that neighborhood, it felt it even more strongly. And so they pulled it out of me, out of like, people need to laugh here. They need to lighten up, and they need to feel like they're a part of, something that's connected. And so my students at one point, after years, especially my advanced classes, is where we'd laugh the most. And so one of my students one day said, okay, we need a name for your yoga. And we decided it was Yuck It Up Yoga.
I love that.
Sometimes we'd laugh so hard we were all crying and just in a heap,
So great. I always say to my students, like, stop taking yoga so seriously. Yoga's part serious, but yoga is also part play. You're like connecting with your young self again. You're connecting with parts of yourself that are like meant to laugh and enjoy. I love that you did that. That's amazing. I wanted to ask you, you've tapped on something there when it comes to you said the community, like the actual community that you found yourself in, not the yoga community, so serious. And I feel like that human beings, it's almost like we are afraid of transformation, because if you're not afraid of transformation, you're probably not going to be so serious in life in general. It's going to be easier for you to go with the flow of life if you're okay with transformation. So I want to ask you, what do you feel is the importance of transformation? Because so many people become a certain way, and then this is how they are going to stay. They are going to stay this way, but gritting their teeth if they must, but they will not change because this is their belief system. These are their morals. This is the way they've been taught to be, and they are never going to change. Why is it important to be okay with transformation in your life?
Well, I would say it really comes down to, what kind of quality of life do you really want to have? So a lot of the more rigid people are, the more they're trying to protect themselves and stay safe, is what I've experienced. And it's fear. It's fear-based. Or they have never been exposed in a way that felt like it was relatable to the idea that you could actually have a different experience. And so, there's a whole lot of people on this planet, and they're in whatever place they're in. And there's no way we can know why people are on the journeys they are, and what's seemingly inscrutable of like, why would you, do things that are destructive, and why would you shoot wild animals, and why would you, like things to me that are I cannot comprehend, right? A lot of people can't. We don't know why, so all we can really do is be in our own, sense of self and journey. And I would say the people who are more likely to consider transformation, they may not even have that word yet. They just know that they need positive change.
Yes.
They know that they don't like where they are and they want it to be different. There's a longing.
Yes.
It's frequently how it begins. And then there's the fear that I may never get what I want, or it may never change. And so that fear sometimes builds the resistance so much that people won't jump in at a deeper level, because they're so terrified that somehow they'll get it wrong, and that it won't be possible. It could be possible for all these other people, but it's not going to be possible for me. And that's all connected with, our childhoods, our, early life experiences, our families, the cultures that we're from, and I feel our individual souls, because a lot of it can't be explained otherwise, because some of us come from all this stuff, and yet, like I've seen in myself, like, I don't know why I was able to be the change maker in my family patterns and break free, and become who I become. Why me? Don't know. Can't really answer that. I can just surmise, based on my experiences. But on the other side of, so there's the longing, then there's the resistance that could bog people down. But then on the other side of that is relief. If we can somehow find our way through the resistance, get help, what we're really longing for, the life we really want to be living in, the relationships we really want to be having within ourselves and others, it's such a relief to get to that point where you go, oh, maybe there is hope.
Yeah.
I can do it.
Yeah, that relief feeling. It's so true. So say a person is listening to this and they are thinking to themselves, okay, that's great. I can understand that there's a longing. I do have a longing. I am in a pattern, or I have come from circumstances that have led me to be in this box that I've built for myself that is safe and secure, and this is where I want to be, even though I have this deep-seated longing that there must be some change. How do they get to that next step of working through, like getting to the next? How do they do it? How do they take the first step towards the transformation? What are some ideas of what people could do to begin the process of transformation? It could be a very long process for so many people, but what are some things that people who are listening can think, okay, yeah, this is doable. I could possibly try this.
Yeah. If I could only know what this really is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of gateways, many gateways. And so there are people who will be drawn to a yoga class because they want to be more flexible or more fit, and they've heard that it's really cool. And they're like, yeah, I want to go do some hot yoga, have a hot body or what have you. And so sometimes it happens where people come in through some door, or they start doing, I don't know, so many things, martial arts, Tai Chi, meditation. There's so many things that could potentially crack somebody open and realize they're like, oh, I didn't know there's something more going on here. Maybe because of the teacher, because of, and then, or meeting people who are doing things that you're like, oh, what are you doing? That's interesting.
Yeah.
And I would say that can be a surprising turn, but there must have been something going on within that person that they really were looking. They just didn't. So one of my favorite also little quotes is, what you are looking for is what is looking. That was at my very first yoga studio. And I was like, that's another one to wrap my head around.
Yeah.
It unfolds differently for different people. And like I said, for some reason, some people have a bigger longing than others. Frequently, it's out of pain and suffering. So, challenging situations, it's well documented and researched that when we have painful challenges, we're more likely to seek help. We're more likely to want to have a different experience because it's so acute. And they've been teaching about this for hundreds and hundreds of years in spiritual paths, and that's why, my teacher's teacher is a Swami in India, Swami Kripalu, said, welcome suffering. It will take you, if you go with it, it will take you where your soul really wants you to go. And to consider that everything that comes to us, no matter how uncomfortable, no matter how catastrophic, is potentially something that has come in order to help us awaken.
Yeah.
And that gets, that's as a hard one to unpack when you see like the level of atrocity. I can attest to, just in my experience, how that has continually showed up. And it is not easy. It is not for the faint of heart. There is no way I could ever present the transformation as some kind of fluffy, magical ride. That's why the work I do, I keep it really straightforward. There aren't any other interventions, not taking away from plant medicines or anything like that. It's just not my journey. It's more like you can do this, and they have their role too. But it takes perseverance, persistence, while it's building your resilience.
Yeah, and I guess you see that in nature. I think we spoke about this also previously, is that in nature, any form of transformation requires some form of breaking, some form of rupturing, whatever it is. That is the true essence of transformation and change, is that something has to break and crack open, and that is never going to be a comfortable thing. You must have seen some really interesting stories of transformation happen in your yoga studio? Because as you say, people come to yoga, and I've seen this, and it's happened to me. You come to yoga and you think, oh, I'm making these nice shapes. That's what I'm doing, and I'm so flexible, and it's so fun. And then the real work starts to happen. So what have you seen happen at your yoga studio?
Oh, well, that was over 20 years ago, so I have to scroll back a bit. But one of my favorite, became one of my favorite students, and his name was Roger Mattioli. And Roger was like the last person you would think would ever walk through the doors of a yoga studio. And he was just, from Brooklyn. He was a heavy set guy. I can't remember what kind of work he did, but I can't even remember why he showed up. It was just so hilarious. I think he was like, I don't know, it might have been like, my doctor said I need to do something, my health isn't good, and he couldn't smile. He was just gruff. He was like a big block, like in terms of being able to move,
Yeah.
I had a lot of students in DC because they were all sitting at a desk all day, who were like frozen in this upper area. So, and over time, and he would growl and snarl and be like, I don't know why I come here anyway. And, and then over the years, he just opened up, loosened up, his whole body changed. And he was still Roger, but he ended up in the most advanced class I had. He came multiple times a week, and he found, he had been alone for a really long time. All of a sudden, he attracts some woman into his life that he starts dating, and his whole, I wish I had before and after pictures, so many people, and I'm sure you've seen it. It's just like, wow, the eyes opening, just a completely different demeanor. And his was just many people I saw, but it was, he was one of the most dramatically changed that I'd ever seen. Yeah.
That's incredible. Because I guess that's the thing with transformation, sometimes it can't come from this emotional, you can't get to the emotional level yet. You have to go through the body first. So I guess things like martial arts and yoga, and even like dancing or just different hobbies, take you out of that emotional state, sort of take you to a place of focus within your body or within whatever practice it is that you're doing, where you are distracted from whatever that trauma is or whatever. And from there, you go into states of a deeper focus and concentration, I guess, where you start to unpack on the inside without even realizing that you're unpacking this trauma, because it's in a safe container of whatever you are doing, whatever that art form is or that hobby. And then from there, you start moving through your trauma or your stress or whatever it is that you're needing to move through, to then eventually tap into the emotional side and be ready for that. It's such an interesting way of working with trauma.
And I realized I didn't fully answer the previous question, but I'm glad it went this way. So what you were just saying is like, yoga and other things of that nature, like I said, whether you're doing some other kind of physical, but more, intentional process like Tai Chi, or like I said earlier, I don't want to say always, but it's a very high likelihood that to experience the relief, I couldn't track Roger over a long period of time because I left and I moved out here. But, depending on what is going on inside of a person, how much trauma there is, I just want to be clear, there is not enough yoga in the world that in and of itself is going to heal all of that for you. And sometimes it can actually crack it open because of the somatic experience. And this is what happened for me at Kripalu, where it was almost, it was beyond what I could actually manage. And sometimes there isn't enough of a container that's actually responsible for people like myself who have complex PTSD, you know. So what I witnessed for myself, even in that big place with all this, you know, support, there were a lot of times where I was pushed beyond what was really safe for me because I didn't have anybody who was trained well enough to be with me. So I had some really sketchy, challenging times.
Okay.
And I do see that happening in certain types of programs. And for many people, it's fine. But when somebody, and this is where, you know, like I said, I'm a trauma-informed transformational coach because of how deep I've had to go because of my own trauma, and then seeing back through my life, the lens of all the different healing situations and circumstances I sought out, and just being in life, you know, how little it's understood, and how many times I was in unsafe environments or with people that just simply didn't have the training to support me, but pretended that they did.
I love that you brought that up,
Yeah.
because I'd love to talk more about that. So things like yoga and all of those things are great to get the first step to open you up. But then if you have got great work to do from trauma work, it's the same with, I guess, psychedelics. It's the same with any time there's a great, what I've noticed many times, and this is what you're speaking to, is that people will do these incredible transformative journeys, whether it's a retreat, whether it's whatever it is, but there's such a lack of integration of that. So you've just gone through this massive transformation, whatever this transformation is, and then you're left to just integrate this yourself. And I guess that's where people like you come in, because if you don't have a transformational coach or a psychologist or a counselor or whatever this person is, if you do not have a professional who can help you to integrate back, that work, I mean, I would think that surely you're going to regress a lot of the times because you're not ready for it. I mean, you didn't, but I would think that a lot of people, it might be too much for them and they'll just sort of go back. You know, what have you seen happen in those situations? What would you say is the...
Well, I mean, pretty extreme, depending on the situation. I don't want to alarm people, but it can be extreme. You know, people have taken their own lives. And that happened where I live, Per Palo, you know, and that was kind of hushed, but it did happen. And luckily, you know, for them, it didn't happen on the grounds, but it was somebody that I knew who went home, and his parents said, we know he's, you know, had a lot of challenges and all of that. So so that's it, but it's also happened in other circumstances that I'm aware of, or people with extreme challenges can really, you know, get unhinged and it could set them back. Then there are more, that's like, I'm just doing like segments of the spectrum, I suppose. Then there's a section of, it can be scary, overwhelming, and cause people to just say, no thanks, never mind, shutting down. I'm going to just go back to drinking and drugging or whatever, or distracting. And just do my life and get busy. And I'm like, not going to do that anymore. To just feeling like, this is, I don't know, you know, any number of things we could try to make sense out of it. But most of it, I would say people then just kind of try to shut it down. And they're like, I'll just stay with my status quo and not like, well, I don't want to go further into that. Go ahead.
So what could you recommend for people? I'm sure there might be people even listening who've been through something and they're thinking, well, I'm here. What the heck am I going to do now? I'm feeling completely unhinged. I'm feeling completely out of my body. I'm feeling like I can't cope. What do I do now with this work that I've done?
Yeah, well, best of all possible worlds. hopefully there's a sense of like, I do need some guidance. I need to get some help with this. Some people have that impulse. Some people, aren't going to go there. But it is, I could, it would be a whole other hour to tell you all the help that I reached out for. And it's not like I did it all by myself. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think it's possible. And and it doesn't make any sense. There's so many people on the planet. And I believe in our highest selves, we're here to help each other. That's why there's so many of us, and not, and it's not the message that somehow you've done it wrong and then you have to figure it out yourself, which I think, sadly, because of our culture, most people's set points are, if it's not working out for me and I'm not all shiny and new and like, which can definitely be out there, then I did it wrong. There's something wrong with me, and all these other people are all like manifesting like crazy and, doing cartwheels and backflips of joy and happiness. And I'm the only one who's like, what the hell what's wrong with me? And that can cause people to isolate even more, which is, it's hard. So I would encourage anybody who's feeling that way, that notices that they're wanting to pull back, that they did have an opening, but then it was like there was a backlash or something of like, now I really don't feel good. That's a normal part of the process. There's a detox element to all deeper healing work, whether personal growth, spiritual growth, wanting to bring ourselves out more into the world, or really, and it's talked about more now, obviously, but if you catch that in yourself, it is an indicator that it could be time to get more personalized help, and that it's really possible. It's possible to navigate through whatever you're going through, and and that there is always hope to be found and relief on the other side. They say it a lot. You got to go through it you can't go over it. You can't go under it. You got to go through it.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of sayings that are out there about it, but it is, because it can indicate you're so close too.
Yeah. I was going to say, like if I think about even tiny little forms of transformation, for example, how many times has this happened to you when you've finished a yoga practice and you're so annoyed for the rest of the day, or so frustrated and so emotional? I mean, those are good. That's a good release. Something has released out of you. And then I think, well, that's like that's one yoga practice. Now imagine going through this massive transformation. And then what? So I think what you say, yes, if you're going through this, reach out to healers around you, people that have know this work, have been doing this work for a long time, can help you to integrate yourself into this new person that you're becoming. Because, let's also talk about the fact that transformation is not a one-off thing. Like, you've gone through transformation, now what?
Transformation is a life choice. It's like seeing through the lens of life I think there was when I was at Kripalu, they had created a program called Life in Transformation to discuss just that. It's an ongoing choice to be what my other teachers called a lifelong learner. The willingness to continue to be humble, to grow, and to keep changing, shifting, knowing that there's always another place to go. We're evolutionary. We're not intended to be static, and there is no check a box and I'm done with anything. How could that possibly make sense? And this is where my rites of passage love and work comes in, because rites of passage highlight the fact that we're constantly being given opportunities of reviewing and marking a change that's going on. And in our culture, we really need to expand that, awareness of So age stage changes and on all through our lives, children moving out, like my case, going out to college, every stage your child goes through is going to affect you personally, and on and on and on it goes. And rites of passage is extraordinary in grounding us to the earth and having visceral, tangible ceremony to, and the connection to what's greater than us and through the creatures and the wild and nature herself is an enormous help in transforming our consciousness and feeling that I was talking about longing. It's like the longing to belong. And have that fulfilled creates a sense of reassurance, in the benevolence of and grace of the universe, as opposed to living in a place where we feel like everything might be against us, or it's, like you said, a mad world. It's all that is what we can change and shift, how we're looking at the whole picture, and especially ourselves within that is what keeps us, people use all kinds of metaphors, but it's kind of hitching yourself to that star of what you truly wish to believe in. And if it's bringing you hope, if it's uplifting you, and then that's, again, the higher road, you're in that's a spiritual sense of response to the call of being in that wider field of divinity, and that there is a bigger picture than we could have ever fathomed. That's, for me, like what keeps me going in there's all kinds of dark nights of the soul that I've had along the way. It's just, I don't know anybody who's genuinely, authentically in their lives and committed to transformation that doesn't.
Actually, I think we have spoken about this before. That transformation, it's very important to understand that, if you are depressed and if you're sad, like I always think when I'm sad, when I'm really feeling depressed, that is when I am feeling the most empathetic. I'm really seeing what is happening. I'm really attuned to what is going on around me and the change that is happening. And so to honor both those, that you have to go through that dark night of the soul to then see the hope and to see the light is so important. And that's like the transformation cycle. It's going from the highs down. You're going to go through those deep dark nights and then find the next hill. And did you explain to me, it was like growing up a hill? I can't remember. I think you told me.
Yeah, I mean, one of my teachers at the University of Santa Monica, where I received my master's degree in spiritual psychology, he would always draw this graph, and it was just a simple line drawing of we start here, and there's a peak, and then there's the valley, and then there's the next peak, which is a little higher than the one before. And so you just gradually are going up. It doesn't mean you still aren't going to go peak to valley. But as he said, what was your high point actually becomes your low point later on if you keep. It's not like everything's linear in that way, but you start, it's one thing that frequently doesn't occur for people, because we're always thinking there's still something in me that needs to be fixed, often is a self-evaluation in a positive light of acknowledging ourselves for all the growth that we've done. A very big missing piece. And positive acknowledgement is absolutely gold. It's because we don't have that woven into our world. And so so if I had this, like, this was when I started off, wow, I'm feeling pretty good here. Whoops, down I go. But then if I keep at it, eventually, when I have a low point, it's nothing near the low point that I used to have, if that makes sense. Yeah. So that is, it's a huge gain, because we're spiritual beings having a human experience. We're here to be human, clearly. We didn't design this world, how it is to be this complex walking miracle. And And yet we don't live as if we're miracles,
I know.
but we are. I mean, it's crazy, like all the things going on to keep our bodies going and our minds firing, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We don't remember it, so, that's why it is a continual choice that we, to make. And the rewards are greater time spent in inner peace, more successful, harmonious relationships, more alignment with our purpose, being of service to others, more joy in the simple things. Like I went into bliss yesterday at the golden hour out under the oak trees. I went there because I had a challenging morning, and I came out of there and I can literally just go into rapture over the beauty if I slow down by myself and really let myself take it in.
Yeah, so true.
And I just want to include because I think it's so important to also say it's okay to not be okay with it.
Yes.
Because we're human.
Yes.
And we're and I find the more it's like, okay, I'm not okay with this today, or this sucks. I hate it. I don't want to do it. Again, back to acknowledgement. If I acknowledge it, that helps it move. If I don't stay stuck in it and then make a story about it of like, oh, but it's because my husband didn't do that, or somebody else didn't do that, or my kids this, or whatever. That's where we get lost, is when we go into blame and a story that can, but if I can just say, I hate this shit, I don't like it. I don't want to be here right now.
Yeah.
And I am, but and I think a lot in our world, and especially when people get into more healing environments and are seeking consciousness, we continue to beat ourselves up, because we think there's some gold standard. We think that there's, I'm supposed to just get better. And it just isn't going to feel that way.
Yeah.
It's about that. We're not trying to be like a better, you're already wonderful and divine and amazing. It's how do you feel? It's feeling better within yourself in a genuine way. That's what because when we feel better, we do better. We are more loving and kind and compassionate. We're more likely to do the things that we feel really called to, that can make the world a better place. Yay.
In your work that you do, this transformational coaching work, what are some of the processes that you use in your transformational coaching work?
I teach and share specifically all the techniques and training that I received in my spiritual psychology graduate program, which are really strongly oriented in many of the things we've talked about, which are emotionally therapeutic. It's really a brilliant system of being present for all the different wounds. You do not have to have complex trauma. We all have stuff, things that occurred in our childhoods. What I'm looking at when I meet with somebody, in addition to whatever they are feeling challenged by, is I just start to experience, because I'm also an intuitive, and I start to get a lot of information, and I know the signs and symbols, like, well, if this challenge or problem is persisting, it's coming from somewhere, and so there's a lot of tools to navigate that, and I share them according to what feels like the right flow for each person. So it's very individualized in that way. And I do everything from being on Zoom, and I have a lot of clients who don't live in the area, and Zoom can be very, very effective. And then in person, I expand the work in terms of the rites of passage and being on the land, because I can do that here. And that can really enhance and take people farther forward. And that's a huge part of the integration piece that you were talking about earlier. And then I do have horses. And so I also have healing coaching sessions in the company of the horses for people who are drawn to them, and especially younger people. It's incredible. So the arc is always intended to lead from what am I know that I want to be done with, what is not working for me. Then we enter into what's called the threshold, which is the place of discovery and new vision, new intentions, and hopefully epiphanies, healing, all kinds of things. And then the incorporation, which I think we talked about the other time, it really means it's the same really thing as embodiment. You're embodying and integrating, what has come up for you, what you want to bring into your life that you really want to be true. So that's a general arc, and then it takes shape and form depending on each person. And I've worked with parents and children, and also families and couples, and all of that kind of flow.
And can you give us just one example of a great transformation that you've seen in your personal transformational coaching work?
So many. I mean, I have helped people, either move on from their relationships or recommit to them. I think I mentioned this family I worked with where the youngest daughter was having this crisis, and a lot of it had to do with all of her brothers were out of the house for various challenging reasons, in a rehab or in a boarding school, or just headed off into wherever. And through the work over a year, we got them all back together. And it was a huge transformation. They were on the brink of divorce. That was a big project. But my ones closest to my heart are a teenager and then a college age. They're both women who were so headed downhill into drugs and worse. And now I stay in touch with them on Instagram. And now one is like a total rock star. She's just out there kicking it. And the other one has become a pilot. She's getting her pilot's license. I'm like, and it was scary places that they were in when I met them. So that's where I love that.
Oh, those are great stories. I love that. All right. So I think we've come to the end of our conversation. Oh my gosh, I could speak to you further, but we have to cut off the time now. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you, before I go into my 3 unreasonable questions, I wanted to ask you just one question about how people can get a hold of you. If they are listening to this thinking, I need Kamakshi as a transformational coach, how do they get a hold of you?
Website, kamakshiheart.com. So my email is there, and you can send me a message, and I always offer a complimentary 30-minute Zoom or phone call. Phone calls are fine too.
Okay, great. So kamakshiheart.com. I will put it in the show notes so that people can find you. And I think the work that you're doing is so lovely. It's just so great that you have taken, what has been dealt to you in your life and transformed it into something that is healing for not only you, but for other people, which is really important. So I do love that. Thank you, Kamakshi. All right, let's get on to my 3 unreasonable questions. Kamakshi, what are you most afraid of?
Well, I can tell you, I'm not spending enough time immersed in our wild world, because it is so precious. And I get busy too, like everybody else. And I really want to spend more time, because there is a little bit of a fear of its vanishingness. And so, yeah,
I feel that way too. Every time I'm in nature, I feel like I just want to be there forever. I don't want to leave ever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Me too.
All right. My second question is, what advice would you give your younger self, knowing what you know now?
Oh my goodness. It wasn't your fault. and it really genuinely is going to be okay. And there are people who will help you.
I love that. Yes. My final question, Kamakshi, what is your definition of an unreasonable human?
Someone who can't be controlled. The willingness to, use my voice, speak up, in whatever way I want to, with no constructs around that or need to conform to any particular anything.
Yes. Kamakshi, thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation, and I've learned so much about myself in this conversation. It's just been very, very interesting and very informative, and thank you for the work that you do. This is very important work in the world, and I feel that for anybody who wants to be an unreasonable human and who wants to live an authentic life and really understand what truth is about, this work that you do, transformational work, is really where it all begins. So thank you for sharing all of your wisdom today. And I'm definitely going to have to speak to you again sometime soon when we go through another transformational process, because it's never going to end.
That's right.
So thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Unreasonable Humans. Thanks so much for joining me. Please follow the show wherever you listen to your podcasts, and remember that a great rating goes a very long way to support the show. Until the next one, bye.